Hello everyone, my name is Cheyenne Smeaton, and today I will be presenting to you about the consequences of climate change. Climate change impacts are prevalent in every single element that we see on Earth. However, climate change impacts are uneven across the country and the world, which is why we have a global scale and a regional scale. Also, for underserved communities where climate change may impact them the most, it is hard for them to combat it due to limited resources. For an example, single community, climate change impacts can vary between neighborhoods or individuals. First, we are going to talk about the impacts of climate change on a global scale. This can affect global average temperatures, melting glaciers, and warming the oceans. Global average temperatures have rose about 1.98 degrees Fahrenheit, which is equivalent to 1.1 degrees Celsius, from the year of 1901 to 2020. Next, we're going to talk about the melting glaciers. Glaciers are shrinking. With an average thickness of 30 well-studied glaciers, they have decreased more than 60 feet since 1980. As you can see on the picture on the right-hand side of the slide, this is a life cycle of a glacier. We can see steps 1 through 6 from the birth into the breakage. We can see why this is occurring and how this is happening, and I thought this was a great demonstration to show the audience of how glaciers melt in their life cycle and what the climate change is contributing to them. Warming oceans. When climate change affects the temperatures and currents of the ocean, it will lead to changes in climate patterns around the world. Warmer waters may promote the development of stronger storms in the tropics, which can cause property damage and loss of life. Next, we're going to talk about global average surface temperatures. So this was a great graph that I wanted to demonstrate. You can see that the year 2022 was the 6th warmest year since global records started in 1880. And it did start at 0.86 degrees Celsius, which is equivalent to 1.55 degrees Fahrenheit above the 20th century average, which was 13.9 degrees Celsius, equivalent to 57 degrees Fahrenheit. The 10 warmest years in the 143-year record have all happened since 2010, with the finishing 9 years, which is 2014 to 2022, ranking as the 9 warmest years on record. Interchangeable to 2021, the year 2022 started with a cold phase called El Niño Southern Oscillation, otherwise known as ENSO episode. This was also referred to as La Nina, that continued throughout the year. ENSO not only changes global weather patterns, but it also changes global temperatures. As seen in the image, throughout the warm phase of ENSO, global temperatures tend to be warmer than ENSO neutral or La Nina years, while global temperatures tend to be slightly cooler during cold phase ENSO episodes, not ranking among the 5 warmest years on record. The global annual temperature increased at average rate of 0.08 degrees Celsius, which is equivalent to 0.14 degrees Fahrenheit, every decade since 1880, and over twice that rate since 1981. Examples of climate change on a global scale. The first example is due to the increased global temperatures, food production is harmed. Due to the increases contingent on the climate and weather states, even though farmers and researchers might be able to adapt some agricultural techniques and technologies or create new ones, certain temperatures will be difficult to manage. Rising temperatures, drought and water stress, diseases, and weather extremes develop challenges for the farmers and ranchers that provide food for the community. Human farm workers can suffer from heat-related health issues like exhaustion, heat stroke, and heart attacks. Rising temperatures and heat stress can also harm livestock. And the second example would be due to glacial melt, viruses and bacteria are awakening and could affect human health. According to the Journal of Travel Medicine, about 58% 218 of the 375 of infectious diseases that humans have ever encountered in history have been amplified by climatic changes. Empirical cases highlight 1,006 different ways in which climate change paves the way for a spectrum of diseases. Throughout so many years, the glaciers have been frozen and have frozen the diseases into the ice, which has made them dormant for so long. However, with rising temperatures and glaciers melting, these viruses are becoming not dormant anymore and becoming reawakened, which can affect our lives and human health in general throughout the globe. As you can see in the pictures incorporated, for the first example, I have a woman that is walking across the Horn of Africa, and that is an example because in the Horn of Africa specifically, they have been experiencing high levels of droughts, which has been causing them to have a hard time growing crops and actually surviving and being able to eat. And in the second example, you can see the picture listed above, and this shows how many years the bacteria has stayed dormant versus what is happening now. And you can see that the cores are samples taken from the glaciers. Next, we're going to talk about the impacts of climate change on a regional scale. Depending on the region, some areas will experience drought while other areas experience floods. Certain areas of the world will warm much faster than others. Some regions will experience more rainfall, while others are exposed to more frequent droughts. Regional changes in temperature and precipitation are affecting people and ecosystems. When animals cannot adapt to these climate changes and are not able to move into new areas, then they face extinction. Regional changes in temperature and precipitation impacts people and ecosystems. Even though the world's global temperature is rising every year, that does not mean that the entire world is experiencing the same warming temperatures at the same time. Many parts of the world could experience increase in the frequency and intensity of extreme, heavy rain events, and in other parts of the world, dry conditions may become more severe and last longer. In Africa, between 75 and 250 million people are expected to be vulnerable to drought and minimum drinking water. It is harder for farmers to grow crops due to the very dry conditions. In other areas of the world, the increased rainfall is predicted to come in the form of more frequent heavy downpours. Certain regions may receive an average increase in rainfall per year, but the increase may manifest itself as heavier rains punctuated by longer dry spells between these deluges. When combining land use like deforestation, the change in precipitation patterns is likely to cause a greater incidence of flooding. Animals that cannot move regions are threatened by extinction as well. When rapid changes in climate are occurring and causing drastic regional weather pattern changes, the animals need to try to adapt the best way they can. For certain species, in order to survive due to rising temperatures, they would have to move regions. When an animal population cannot move regions and succumb to the new changes that the region is producing through climate change, then they are susceptible to extinction. There would be no evidence that tells us they would survive. You can see that this graph is of the Arctic's second warmest year. The top image represents the departure from the average temperatures across the Arctic in 2020, with the redder colors showing areas of substantial warmth. The bottom half of this graphic represents how Arctic air temperatures change from global temperatures since the 1900s. The year 2020 in the Arctic saw the 7th warmest air temperature in the instrumental record. We can also see that the snow-free period across the Eurasian Arctic during summer 2020 was the longest since, at least we could tell, 1990. Following the decades of relative stability, the Greenland ice sheet has now lost mass almost every year since 1998. In August, rainfall was observed at the Greenland ice sheet's 10,500-foot summit for the first time ever. As we can see, due to these facts, something is occurring and our climate is worsening every single year. Especially since the 1990s, our world has increasingly been warmer. And this is exceptionally dangerous, especially because we're seeing things like first rainfall in Greenland for the first time this year. If that happened this year, then what does that mean for us next year and the years to come? Examples of climate change on a regional scale. Manatees in Florida are dying. More than 1,000 manatees died in Florida last year, wiping out more than 10% of the state's population. The unusually high mortality rate for the threatened mammals has continued into 2022. We have experienced 562 deaths in the first 5 months of 2022. The reason for so many deaths is the result of starvation, as high levels of water pollution killed off the seagrass on which the animals depend upon. Due to nitrogen and phosphorus pollution from leaking septic systems, fertilizer runoff, and wastewater treatment, it is seeping into the waters in Florida. This is fueling algal blooms, which prevent seagrass to grow. The polar regions are warming, much like we talked about and much like we saw in the Arctic regions. The northern and southern points of the planet are warming faster than any area on Earth, with the Arctic Ocean and air temperatures rising twice as much as elsewhere. Australia is also experiencing a full range of regional climate changes. Australia experiences higher temperatures, more extreme droughts, fire seasons, floods, and more extreme weather due to climate change. Rising sea levels add to the intensity of high sea level events and threaten housing and infrastructure. And with all that being said, lastly, we can look at the chart to the right-hand side that does speak about manatees that are dying in Florida, and it can show the number of manatee deaths in Florida each year, and we can see that they have just been increasing since 1974. And that was my presentation, and this is the Works Cited page. The Works Cited page continued, and I hope everybody enjoyed, and I hope you have a great week. Thank you.